Picture this. You're driving down a deserted country road late at night. The only sound is the low hum of your engine. Suddenly, your headlights catch a pair of glowing eyes on the side of the road. But this is no deer. It's huge, covered in dark fur, and as it stands up on two legs, you realize you're staring at something that just shouldn't exist. That was the terrifying experience of just one of the dozens of people who claim they've come face to face with the Beast of Bray Road. Is it a real-life werewolf lurking in the American Midwest? A modern monster? And how did we get from ancient curses and chilling real-world sightings like these? Two werewolves, battling vampires in blockbuster movies. The idea of a human transforming into a wolf is one of our oldest and most stubborn fears. It's a legend that has shapeshifted over the centuries, reflecting the anxieties of every era. Today, we're going on a journey to discover what's really lurking in the shadows. We'll trace the werewolf from its mythological origins and the terrifying werewolf trials of medieval Europe, to the lonely backroads of Wisconsin, where a modern cryptid still has locals looking over their shoulders. And finally, we'll see how Hollywood grabbed this ancient fear and turned it into the pop culture icon we know today. We're separating the terrifying facts from the popular fiction. Section 1. The Ancient Curse. Origins of the man-wolf. Before werewolves were creatures of the full moon and silver bullets, they were born from the wrath of the gods. The concept is ancient, and one of the very first surviving literary references appears in the Epic of Gilgamesh. In this Mesopotamian story, the hero Gilgamesh rejects the goddess Ishtar, pointing out that she once turned a shepherd who loved her into a wolf, a creature now hunted by his own dogs. Even in our earliest stories, the man-wolf was a figure of tragedy, born from a divine curse. But the tale that truly gave us the term lycanthropy comes from Greek mythology, and it's a story about a cruel king named Lycaon. As told by the Roman poet Ovid, who recorded the older Greek myth, Lycaon was the king of Arcadia, a man known for his impiety. When Zeus, king of the gods, heard whispers of Lycaon's wickedness, he visited the mortal world in disguise to see for himself. While the common people recognized the signs of a god and began to pray, Lycaon just mocked them, decided to cook up a test to see if his guest was truly a god or just a man. That night, Lycaon did something unspeakable. He murdered a hostage in some versions. It was his own son, and cooked the flesh, serving it to Zeus at a feast. The plan was to see if Zeus was all-knowing enough to recognize the forbidden meal. Of course, Zeus knew instantly. His fury was absolute. With a single bolt of lightning, he brought the king's palace crashing down. Lycaon, terrified, fled into the countryside. But as he ran, a horrifying transformation began. His clothes turned to fur, his arms warped into powerful legs, and his jaw elongated into a snout full of sharp teeth. He was no longer a man but a wolf, cursed to keep his human mind and savage thoughts, a punishment that fit the crime. The legend of King Lycaon cemented the werewolf as a consequence of defying divine law, a monster born from hubris and cruelty. This idea of a wolfman wasn't just limited to Greece. In Norse sagas, warriors known as the Elfenor would wear wolf pelts into battle, believing they could channel the animal's ferocity and strength. For them, becoming wolf-like wasn't a curse, but a source of incredible power. As Europe entered the Middle Ages, however, the perception of the werewolf took a much darker turn. Amid widespread superstition and religious turmoil, the wolf, already a natural predator feared by rural communities, became something more sinister, an agent of the devil. This fear culminated in horrifying werewolf trials that ran parallel to the infamous witch hunts. Maybe the most notorious case of all is that of Peter Stubb, a 16th-century German farmer who became known as the Werewolf of Bedburg. For over 2 decades, the area around the small town of Bedburg was terrorized by a series of gruesome attacks. Livestock were mutilated. Men, women, and children vanished. Their remains later found in the fields, torn apart. The culprit was believed to be a powerful wolf, but no one could catch it. The terror supposedly came to an end in 1589, according to the popular pamphlets that spread like wildfire at the time. A group of hunters finally cornered the beast. Just as they closed in, they claimed the wolf transformed before their very eyes into the familiar shape of their neighbor, a wealthy farmer named Peter Stubb. Under torture, Stubb delivered a confession that horrified all of Europe. He claimed that since he was 12, he had practiced black magic. The devil, he said, had given him a magical belt made of wolf skin that let him transform into a ravenous werewolf at will. In this form, he confessed to a spree of violence spanning 25 years, admitting to killing and devouring at least 16 people, including pregnant women and even his own son, whose brains he claimed to have eaten. On October 31st, 1589, Peter Stubb was subjected to one of the most brutal executions ever recorded. He was strapped to a wheel, his flesh torn away with red-hot pincers. His limbs were then shattered, before he was finally decapitated and his body burned. While the story is well documented in pamphlets from the period, modern historians generally believe his confession was almost certainly forced under extreme duress. A horrific example of how folklore and fear can twist reality. The case of Peter Stubb, fact or forced fiction, cemented the werewolf in the public imagination as a diabolical monster. Wasn't a tragic victim like Lycone. He was a serial killer who perhaps used the supernatural as a mask for his depravity. But the werewolf didn't just stay in the old world. As centuries passed, it seemed to cross the Atlantic, where a new and perhaps very real chapter of the legend was about to begin. Section 2. The American Werewolf. Cryptids in the modern age, the werewolf of European legend was a creature of curses and dark magic. But as belief in sorcery faded, the creature itself didn't disappear. Instead, it evolved. It shed its magical skin and re-emerged in the modern world, not as a cursed man, but as a cryptid and unknown animal, lurking just beyond the edge of science. And its most famous hunting ground is a quiet stretch of farmland in southeastern Wisconsin. Welcome to Bray Road, a rural road outside the small town of Elkhorn. On the surface, it's a perfectly ordinary place. But for decades, this road has been the epicenter of sightings of a creature so terrifying. It's become an American legend, the Beast of Bray Road. The story of the beast was first brought to national attention by one person, Linda Godfrey. In the late 1980s, Godfrey was a reporter for a local paper, the Walworth County Week. She started hearing strange rumors of people seeing something on Bray Road, initially a skeptic. She started investigating and soon discovered that the stories were consistent, detailed, and utterly terrifying. Her work, which she later compiled into the book The Beast of Bray Road, tailing Wisconsin's werewolf, turned a local legend into a national phenomenon. Though the main wave of sightings was in the 80s and 90s, Godfrey's research uncovered reports from as far back as 1936. That year, a night watchman named Mark Shackleman reported seeing a large, hairy creature digging in a Native American burial mound, describing it as over 6 feet tall with the head of a wolf. But it was the encounters in the autumn of 1989 that truly lit the fuse. One of the first people to come forward was Lori Andretzi, a local lounge manager driving home on Bray Road. In her headlights, she saw a figure crouched by the side of the road. She got closer. She saw it was muscular and covered in grayish-brown fur. When she looked in her rearview mirror, it turned to face her. It had a long snout like a wolf, and its eyes glowed in the dark. Her story opened the floodgates. Dozens of people began sharing their own encounters, many afraid of ridicule. The descriptions were shockingly similar. A large bipedal creature, 6 to 7 feet tall, with a muscular, man-like torso and a wolf's head.
Wow.
Many also reported a foul stench like rotting meat. One young girl, Heather Bowie, saw what she thought was a big dog, but when she called to it, the creature stood up on its hind legs and took wobbly steps toward them. Perhaps one of the most harrowing accounts came from a woman in 1999, while driving on Bray Road. She felt a hard thud as her front tire lifted off the ground. She got out to check, but saw nothing on the road. As she walked to the back of her car, a massive dark shape came charging out of the woods at her. She scrambled back into the car as the towering wolf-like beast jumped onto her trunk before sliding off. What is the Beast of Bray Road? Skeptics suggest. It's just misidentification, a black bear, a large wolf, or a big dog. But eyewitnesses are adamant. The combination of a canine head, a bipedal stance, and intelligent eyes doesn't match any known animal in the area. Cryptozoology researchers believe it might be an undiscovered species, often called a dogman. Similar sightings reported across North America, especially the Michigan Dogman. Others wonder if it truly is a werewolf, a creature of supernatural origin. Linda Godfrey, who sadly passed away in 2022, came to believe that the witnesses weren't lying. They had genuinely seen something extraordinary. The Beast of Bray Road remains an unsolved mystery. It represents a fascinating leap for the werewolf legend, from ancient myth into the modern world as a tangible, breathing cryptid. But while people in Wisconsin were looking for a real-life monster, Hollywood was busy creating an entirely different kind of werewolf, one that would define the creature for the entire world. Section 3. The Silver Screen Shapeshifter. Hollywood invents the modern monster. While the backroads of America were birthing a new cryptid, the movies were about to give the ancient legend its most lasting form. Before 1941, werewolves in film were a mixed bag. The 1935 film, Werewolf of London, introduced the idea of the curse being passed by a bite. But it wasn't a huge success. The werewolf lacked a clear identity. That all changed with one film. A movie that didn't just tell a werewolf storyette, wrote the rulebook. That film was Universal Pictures' The Wolfman, starring Lon Chaney Jr. The Wolfman tells the story of Larry Talbot, an American who returns to his ancestral home in Wales. He buys a silver-headed walking cane from a local antique shop, where he learns a chilling poem. Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright. That night, Larry uses that same cane to fight off a wolf attacking a woman, but he gets bitten in the process. He soon learns from an old gypsy woman that the wolf was her son, a werewolf. And with that bite, the curse has passed to Larry. What makes The Wolfman so important is that its screenwriter, Kurt Siodmak, essentially invented modern werewolf mythology from a mix of scattered folklore and his own imagination. First, he cemented the vulnerability to silver. While it had appeared in a few obscure folktales, this film made it law that only silver could kill a werewolf. Second, the film popularized the link between the transformation and the moon, which sequels would simplify to the full moon, creating a terrifying trigger for the change. But perhaps the film's biggest contribution was how it reframed the werewolf itself. Larry Talbot isn't evil. He's a good man, horrified by what he becomes. The film is a tragedy. Larry is a victim doomed by bad luck. This transformed the werewolf from a villain into a tragic antihero, defined by the struggle between his human soul and the monster within. The film's makeup, designed by the legendary Jack Pierce, was also groundbreaking, creating the perfect blend of man and beast. The Wolfman was a massive success and became one of the core Universal monsters. For decades, nearly every werewolf on screen was a descendant of Larry Talbot. The rules, the bite, the full moon, the silver bee, came cinematic law. It wasn't until 1981, The Howling and An American Werewolf in London, that the genre saw its next great leap. Thanks to incredible advances in practical effects, these films showed every agonizing moment of the change in visceral, unforgettable detail. They honored the tragic template of the Wolfman while pushing the boundaries of on-screen horror. But legends must evolve, and in the 21st century, the werewolf would transform once again. Section 4. The 21st Century Wolf Infection. Identity and reinvention. The 20th century werewolf was a creature of curse and tragedy. But as we entered a new millennium, our fears began to shift. Anxieties about contagion, genetics, and identity began to seep into our folklore. The curse became an infection. Supernatural became biological. A planned 2025 film, Wolfman, appears to lean into this, with reports suggesting it frames the condition less like a curse and more like a terrifying, infectious disease. The story reportedly follows a man who must protect his family from the monster he is slowly becoming after being infected. This modern take taps into our contemporary fears of viruses and pandemics, the idea of something invading and hijacking your body. This trend is everywhere in modern pop culture. The werewolf is no longer just a monster. It's a flexible metaphor for a whole range of human experiences. One of the most potent is adolescence. Puberty is a real-life transformation. Your body changes, you're flooded with new impulses, and you can feel like a monster in your own skin. It's no surprise that werewolves are a staple of young adult fiction, like in MTV's Teen Wolf or The Twilight Saga, where the transformation is an allegory for growing up. This also leads to a modern exploration of identity. The classic struggle of Larry Talbot has been expanded. In the underworld films, werewolves are an entire species fighting for freedom, making lycanthropy a collective identity tied to rebellion. In shows like Being Human, a werewolf, a vampire, and a ghost live together, exploring what it means to be human from the outside. The werewolf has evolved from a simple villain to a complex anti-hero, and sometimes even a romantic figure. This reflects a cultural shift. We read less interested in simple good versus evil and more fascinated by the gray areas, by the monster that lurks within us all. The modern werewolf is a symbol of our own internal battles, between our civilized selves and our primal instincts, between who we are and who we fear we could become. From a divine punishment in ancient Greece to a satanic pact in medieval Germany, from a tragic curse in a Hollywood classic to a terrifying cryptid on a Wisconsin road, and finally, to a biological infection and a metaphor for identity, the werewolf has proven to be one of our most enduring legends. We've journeyed from ancient curses to lonely roads and all the way to the silver screen. The werewolf has been a monster, a victim, and even a hero. So, what's your favorite werewolf movie or legend? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this trip into the shadows, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries. Conclusion: the story of the werewolf is a long and winding road. It starts in myth with the cruel King Lycoon, takes a dark turn into history with the horrifying trial of Peter Stubb, and re-emerges in the modern era as a flesh-and-blood creature said to stalk the American Midwest. It was then captured by Hollywood's The Wolfman, which gave us the tragic figure that would dominate pop culture for a century. Today, the legend keeps evolving, transforming into a metaphor for infection, identity, and the chaos of growing up. Fascination with werewolves reveals a deep question about ourselves. We're drawn to the story of the beast within because, on some level, we all feel the struggle between our civilized selves and our primal instincts. The werewolf is a mirror, reflecting our deepest anxieties about losing control. It's a legend that constantly transforms, just like the creature itself. So the next time you're out on a lonely road and you hear a howl in the distance, you might just wonder what's really lurking in the shadows.